Tragically, I lost my son, Ben, to a fentanyl overdose. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to endure. It's happening across Canada. Fentanyl is wiping out an entire generation of our people. So we started a foundation, Guardians of Recovery, to help people with mental health and addictions who are struggling and not included in society. We've done a great job of including people with disabilities in our society. Now imagine a world where people with mental health and addictions have that same level of inclusion. That's what we're about to do. We are inviting you to take part in one of the most progressive and creative initiatives of our time, building sober living homes for our people to make sure they are cared for and have an opportunity to completely come off substance and live normal, productive lives. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Guardians of Recovery live stream podcast once again. We're here to delve into stories of resilience and recovery, mental health and addiction conversations in the hope of transforming the epidemic that we're living in into one of inspiration, personal empowerment, and recovery. I'm your host, Tina Olivero, and joining me today is a very special guest, Tabitha Pruden. Hi, everyone. Tabitha is a proud Cree Métis woman who has called Moh'kinsstis her home since birth, which is also formerly known as, or actually known as, CALGARY. So, and Tabitha brings her expertise with us here today. She's a registered social worker with a deep commitment to supporting unhoused community members, and her personal journey through mental illness and addiction has fueled her passion for helping other people, and it's led her to her current role, which we're going to talk about today, as the project coordinator of University of Calgary Recovery Community. It's so important to us to have you here today, Tabitha. Welcome, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Tina, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my program and about myself.
Before we get into it, now, for people who don't know, Calgary is the area the Blackfoot tribes traditionally called Moh'kinsstis, right? And I think that's where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
And we now call it the city of Calgary, which has been your home since birth. Interesting, very interesting piece of background. So to get us started, Tabitha, could you share a bit about your background, what inspired you to work with the University of Calgary in the recovery community, what sort of led you up to where we are today?
Yeah, for sure. I always, when I'm telling my story, kind of struggle with where do I start? You know, it's been a journey for sure. I guess maybe I'll kind of talk about what led me first into social work. So growing up, I grew up in a two-parent home. I have a younger brother, and always was a pretty happy kid, liked school, did well in school. But as I became a teenager, when I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and dealt with self-harm, suicide attempts, and just kind of really, really struggled mentally. I ended up being hospitalized for a 2-month period when I was 16. And that to me was first of all, was a very traumatic experience for me. But it kind of opened up the world in terms of like social work. Like that was kind of my first sort of experience, being aware of social work and dealing with like the mental health system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so after getting out of the hospital, I was connected to an outpatient program, and to help deal with my like to self-medicate, basically I was using substances. And I ended up, they drug tested us at the outpatient center, and I tested positive, of course. And so they kicked me out of the outpatient center because, it was only for mental health issues and not for concurrent issues,
Mhm.
which, looking back at, uh, really frustrates me.
I can see why, because they go hand in hand.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And like this was, 2006, and I think we have come, uh, a little bit farther in terms of that support. But yeah, that was kind of my first experience of thinking too, like there's something wrong with this system. Um, so yeah, so after that, I kind of dealt with dealing with those substance use issues for another 4 years, and um, kind of got into progressively harder substances, and then I kind of, I don't know what it was exactly, but a part of me was like, I think that there's something wrong with this, that, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I also started to kind of, I've always been like an artistic person, a creative person, and started to develop an interest in photography. So I wanted to go to school for digital photography. And I am lucky enough to have the support of my family, and who are able to financially support me to go to school for that. And I moved to Kelowna for a year to do that. And I think part of it too was that I say this to other people who've dealt with substance use issues, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, I get that." I was trying to move away from my substance use issue. Yeah, you think, oh, if I'm away from my friends and my dealers, that I can get away from this.
Right.
But of course, it followed me
Yeah.
to Kelowna.
Yeah, because wherever you go, there you are.
It's true, well,
Yeah.
you'll find it, if you want it, right? Um, so there I went to school, and still dealing with the substance use. But at the time, I had a partner who, we had been using together. And I think for For me, I went through what's called a natural recovery. And so that's something that I kind of learned about actually just recently. um, and it's quite a large percentage of people go through a natural recovery. And so it's where,
Can you define that for us?
yeah, of course. So a natural recovery is actually where, you're kind of able to utilize the supports around you, and something just clicks in your brain where you're like, okay, I need to stop using. I don't know if I had like a specific aha point, but I think something was just like, I can't keep living like this. In Calgary, my partner and we were at the point where, we would have been homeless had we not had support from our parents. We were out of money. Uh, you know, we uh, we were living in a rental that my parents owned and weren't able to pay rent. And yeah, and had we not had that support of our families, we would have ended up in a shelter or on the streets, right? So um, I think, yeah, in terms of that natural recovery, like having spent lots of time in therapy throughout my life, um, what I have kind of come to conclude is that for me, what helped me stop is that I was able to see what this addiction was doing to my partner. And I didn't have enough love and care for myself to quit for myself,
Mhm.
but I did for my partner. And so that's, I think, what kind of helped me get off of the harder substances. That being said, I continued to smoke cannabis for another 10 years, of trying to medicate with that too, right? So it's been um it's been a long journey, and maybe not a typical journey that people think of when they think of being in recovery. I know people often think like 12-step treatment centers. Um, but for me, it was a lot of self-reflection, a lot of therapy, like, one-on-one with a psychologist, a counselor. Um, and so, yeah, I ended up kind of getting off those harder stuff, came back to Calgary, um, ended up working as a courier for another 8 years and just felt really lost. Didn't know what to do, didn't want to return to using substances, but still knew that I was, dealing with some issues and using cannabis daily as well, right? So I, was still medicating. Um, and then I decided to volunteer. It was actually my mom who suggested, "Oh, why don't you try volunteering? Maybe, that'll help give you a purpose." And so I volunteered at Hull Services,
Mhm.
actually. Yeah, and with some kids, and really, really enjoyed it. And that's kind of what opened me up to social work.
Nice.
So I went back to school for social work, and worked for a few years in the unhoused serving sector, which for me, I was very surprised to end up there. I never thought that I would work in that area. But after school, I actually graduated in, it was July of 2020. So a few months after the COVID shutdown.
Mhm.
And so I was just kind of desperate for work. I just applied anywhere and was like, I'm just going to give this a go. And ended up getting a position with a street outreach team. Sorry, that's being. So, yeah, with the street outreach team, I just found a love for working with the unhoused community. Seen a lot of addiction issues there as well, of course, responded to a lot of opioid crises. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so it definitely, I've seen, what it can do to you, and I am grateful every day that I didn't end up there when I know that I could have very easily.
Right. Yeah. So you've had experience from the gamut of all of the different sort of sides of this in terms of, you know, getting into harder drugs and, going through depression and volunteering at Hull, which is for people who don't know, it's a center in the center of Calgary, specifically for youth. Youth who have many challenges, and I think just being able to see volunteer there would be amazing for anybody who wants to get some insight and, um, you know, some inspiration to do some great things in life. That's for sure. Okay, fantastic. So then you, of course, took all that experience and moved on to University of Calgary. And tell us how that manifested, what happened when you went to the University of Calgary, and how did a recovery community emerge within that organization? Because we don't see that typically. We don't see a university that specifically has what I think is the future of most universities, a recovery community within that university. I think it's such an important piece of where we're headed in the future, and I commend you guys for doing so.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's super exciting work because we are one of currently 6 recovery programs in Canada. And yeah, it's very, very new, very exciting. That being said, we are based on what's called the Collegiate Recovery Program. And so these actually started in the States in the 1970s,
Oh,
surprisingly.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. So there's quite a few collegiate recovery programs in the States. I think they're right around 250 right
Oh,
now. Yeah, so it's definitely a big movement down there, and it has taken a lot longer for things to get started up here in Canada, and I'm not exactly sure why. But I'll share kind of what brought UCalgary, what led to the creation of our recovery community here at the University of Calgary.
sure.
Um, yeah, so my director, her name is Dr. Victoria Burns, and she is an academic in recovery. And so she is quite open with sharing this story and really is the inspiration for the recovery community. She went through university, getting her master's and her PhD in active addiction. And she um, didn't have any support at the university. You know, it's very much a party culture.
Mm.
You know, even when you meet people, other students there, it's like, oh, hey, you want to go out for a drink, or you know, oh, you passed that test, let's celebrate with a glass of wine. You know, and um, so for her, I think it was really difficult to see anything different than being in addiction because alcohol is so normalized, right? And that was her kind of substance of choice. So what happened is she did end up getting into recovery, and she used the 12-step model for that, and she ended up becoming a professor at the University of Calgary, and was told by her dean at the time that she should not be open about being in recovery because it could put her job in jeopardy.
Ah,
So
aha. Finally, someone speaks up because I think addiction thrives in the dark, and I'm glad that she didn't listen. So that's wonderful.
yes. Yeah. So she actually has shared that she got to a point where, you know, she felt that she was living in secret with her addiction. And now that she was in recovery, she is still living in secret. And I think it just didn't jive with her health, with who she is, right? And so um, she, yeah, then went to her dean. I think it was maybe a different one at that point in time, and said, "You know what? I can't do this. I have to leave if I can't be open about being in recovery, if I can't share it with students, with colleagues."
Mhm.
And that dean actually supported her in that disclosure. So she was able, yeah, she was able to find someone to kind of support her in that. And
Wonderful.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And so with that, that led to her doing research around the disclosure of being in recovery for academics.
Mhm.
And that led to, for her, uh, uh, the CRP, or the Collegiate Recovery Programs, that kind of opened the door for her to learn about those, and had noticed, yeah, that they're in the States, but they were only supporting students. And
Mhm.
so what she wanted to do is take a whole campus approach in terms of being there to support students, staff, and faculty. Um, you know, there's statistics about you know, staff in recovery miss less days of work,
Yeah.
um, and but also being there for those who are struggling with substance use, right? Because again, we struggle in the dark because we don't have a safe place where we can go. You know, we're going to lose our job, we're going to lose our house, we're going to lose our partner, right? So
Yeah.
so if we're in a workplace where, you know, you have support to access the resources that you need, it can be, you know, it can make you get help quicker, and just, you know, create a better place of employment.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
it became sort of like all-encompassing student, staff, faculty, a whole entire ecosystem, an environment, or an inclusive culture.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Fantastic,
correct.
fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay, so then you emerged on the scene somewhere in between all of
Right. Yeah, so she started this program in 2021, and I joined the team in August of 2023. So it's only been about 8 months, I think.
Okay.
Um, but wow, I have learned a lot in that time. So I also was not aware of collegiate recovery programs. And, it's actually really interesting. So a colleague of mine was working with Dr. Burns, and I had gone to school with her actually, and she had said, "Oh, Dr. Burns is looking for a project coordinator," and so um, I love working in program development, like helping to get those new programs up and running off the ground, and I was interested in the addiction aspect of, having worked with the unhoused community members, but working in a different population. I think I thought I would enjoy the challenge of a different population. And the other thing too was that I had never really identified as being in recovery. I knew that I had had issues with substances in my past, and um, but for me, it was something that it was just there, and I tried to ignore it, I guess, was kind of uh, how I was approaching things. And my colleague had told me, Dr. Burns is really looking for someone who can be out and open about being in recovery, who can help to break that stigma, right?
Mhm.
And for me, the what really attracted me to the program was that the stigma piece, the trying to battle that, because people who have dealt with addiction, there's so much stigma around it. Like, I think we've come quite far in terms of mental health, or
Yeah.
you know some types of mental health anyways, that have had seen a reduction in stigma, but around substance use, it's still really seen as a moral failing within our society. It seemed like, oh, you did this to yourself. This is your fault. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you'll, get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that for me, I really wanted to help address that. And I felt too that it'd really be an area of growth for me personally as well, because I had never been okay, or maybe not been okay. Well, yeah, no, I'd never been able to say that, yes, I've dealt with substance use issues. Yes, I'm in recovery. And so joining the team, I kind of felt like a fraud in a way, because I'm like, yeah, because I'm like, I dealt with substance use issues, but didn't go to treatment, haven't gone to like peer support, mutual aid groups. And then I met one of Dr. Burns's research assistants early on. And she had said to me, she's like, "Oh, well, tell me your story," And so I kind of hesitantly told her my story. And she's like, "Oh, you went through a natural recovery. Me too." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's like, this is valid. Like, other people have dealt with this." And
Yeah.
um, yeah, so for me, that was really eye-opening and validating for
Mm.
me. And I think
And
there's probably a lot of people out there like me who
yeah,
have, yeah, dealt with this, but aren't sure that they are allowed to claim that identity, maybe.
right. I mean, I think
Mhm.
like coming to that point in your life's history must have been so freeing, and must have felt now a place of authenticity and full self-expression, and as you said, validated. And to be validated with your experience is everything. And so, you know, taking all of that and that whole entire experience and everything that you are now, sort of saying, okay, what do we do with all of this? How can this self-expression, now that it's authentic and it's real and there's nothing to hide, and it has a purpose, how do I, serve the world in that capacity? Which is the juncture that you sort of stepped into, I guess, 8 months ago.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of been a reason why I got into social work is like my experience with the mental health system and, having dealt with, like depression, suicidality. I really wanted to share that with people, but hadn't really thought about the addiction piece of it. But then getting into social work, like when I first went to school, I had an instructor tell me, if you're here because of your personal experiences, then you're not here for the right reasons.
Oh,
And yeah, I know, I know. So within the social work profession, there still is a little bit of, so that was, how many years ago was that? That was 6 years ago. So I do think that the social work profession has started to embrace lived experience.
yeah.
Yeah, and even like the health system is seeing, peer support workers hired there, and
Mhm.
um, to me, like that's a huge breath of fresh air because it just gives you that extra experience to be able to connect with people. It's
For sure.
yeah. Hmm.
So if you're a person who has, or you're on your recovery journey, or you're looking for a university that has a recovery community, like how do you advertise that? How do you market it? How do you say, hey, come to our university because we have like a recovery campus? Or what are the things you do? What actually encompasses and makes up a recovery community within the university?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, this is a super exciting program because there are so many different things that we're doing right now. So, I mentioned we started in 2021, but we actually didn't get our own physical space on campus until October of 2023. So we were kind of like, in this little office, where students couldn't access us. So we were really trying to get things going without having a space where students could go. So we really were offering like substance-free events. And so that piece was trying to normalize that you can have fun without substances, right?
So
Whether that's, oh, yeah, sorry.
before you go further, I'm so interested to hear about what type of events they were.
Yeah, yeah. So we do lots of different things. So I think our most popular event, at least since I've been here, is we had a Halloween party, a substance-free Halloween party, and we called it Freaky Friday because we had like a French fry bar. We did like Halloween themed mocktails. We had a karaoke machine. We made slime. We did naloxone training. So yeah, and then we do other like, we've done bracelet making event or let me see. Oh, we've done harm reduction trivia nights where you can win prizes and learn some things. So yeah, we just kind of really try to do different fun events. Oh, we had a paint night too. Um, yeah, and we want to create that community that is a really important part of like our mission. So UCRC, we are a peer-led program. That's where I come in.
Mhm.
And we are working we support all pathways to recovery, and we're working to build community and address stigma for all University of Calgary campus members.
Very nice. So when you say address stigma, how do you do that precisely?
Yeah, so the addressing stigma is really about being out there. So when we were just in our little office, we have a coffee cart. It's very cute, like it almost like you think of a little like old school like ice cream man sort of cart. You walk around campus, and so we would go out and give coffee out to anyone who's hanging around, free coffee, but also talk about addiction and recovery, talk about supports in place. We would do little surveys to kind of get a sense of where our campus was at in terms of stigma, in terms of what kind of supports they would like to see, and whether or not they were in recovery or not. Because there's very little research done within a Canadian context about post-secondary substance use. And so that was really something I think that Dr. Burns wanted to, get some data around to
Yeah.
see. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So how many people actually start to get involved in the programs? Like, did you see a big uptake, or were people kind of shy about it first? And how'd that go? I guess there's a bit of a transition period.
Yes, there definitely is a transition period. So from our connection with the collegiate recovery programs in the States, they say it takes about 3 to 5 years to get an established recovery community going. So from 2021 to 2023, like it took 2 years for us to get a physical space on campus, right? So that, it really is addressing the stigma. Where getting university buy-in can be tough, and there's only so much money to go around. We're actually funded by the Students Union, our program.
Okay.
So it's
Right.
really amazing to see that the Students Union saw value in our program to be able to be out there to support students.
Truly fantastic. That is. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So having that space was kind of the first step in the university supporting us. So our provost said, okay, you can have this space for 1 year to see how it goes, and to, see if there's a need. I guess basically, they want us to show the stuff that we're the people that we're supporting, right? Because I think a lot of people don't understand that there is a need for this, right? When you think of someone who's dealing with addiction, you do not think of a university student or staff member, right? That's not the first thing that comes to mind.
No.
But we're here. We're there. We're just,
Yeah.
maybe hiding in plain sight,
Yeah. Like, we have done a really good job with disabilities, starting to be very inclusive. We really care. We try to design spaces and experience for people with disabilities. I think that same level of care and architecting an environment and experience needs to be there for in the same way with people who are dealing with mental illness and addiction. And I think when we do that, that's going to create something entirely different. People will be more thoughtful and more, I guess, what's the word? Inclusive, I guess, is the word. Inclusive in all things, just mindful of their language, like not forcing
Yes.
people to have a drink, or being able to just not only accept people where they are, but really empower them with that challenge of addiction, and to support them in so many ways, from inviting them to a party and making sure that it's fine not to drink there and or do drugs, and to have places where, like you said, like you can have a lot of fun completely sober. So yeah, I commend you guys for doing all of that and being pioneers too at the forefront of it. You're designing something brand new that hasn't been done before. So you really are in Canada, starting something new. You said that there was 6 universities.
Yeah, so we were actually number 3 on the list to start up. The first one was actually the University of BC, and So that was created by I believe it was a postdoctoral student. Don't quote me on that. But she originally was from the States, went to school in the States where there was a collegiate recovery program, came to BC, was shocked that there wasn't anything here, and started that collegiate recovery program in BC.
Fantastic. And
Yeah,
where are the other ones? Do you know?
Hamilton, Ontario. It's
Okay.
oh no, Hamilton, U Windsor is the one.
Okay.
Maybe that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so those are the other two I'm familiar with. I'm not too sure, but I've heard that there's 6 total
Okay.
across Canada. So
Well, good. I hope this time next year, every university across Canada will have this
yeah.
initiative. And I hope the feds are listening and they put these considerations into their budget for our students, not just in universities, but also in high school.
Yeah,
Because I
for
think our high
sure.
schools need the exact same thing, not just high schools, but every sort of facet of life needs an inclusive recovery consideration. And we've seen it starting to pop up with our interview that we had with David Best. Recovery inclusive cities are now popping up. There is 30 of them around the world, which is so inspiring to see. You know, inclusive villages, inclusive cafes, inclusive businesses, inclusive bakery. Like, I thought
Yeah.
that was great. And all these new inclusive spaces. Like I
Mhm.
can't think of anything better than going to a bar where there's no alcohol and drugs. I think that would be amazing. I wouldn't have to worry about my drink getting spiked and all these
Yeah,
things. And I feel
for
so
sure.
safe and secure just to go out and have a great time and get some exercise and go dancing with all my friends. Like, yes, bring it on. Someone
Yeah.
someone start the first recovery dance bar.
Yeah, it's super exciting for sure. And I definitely see a movement. It's gaining ground, like you talk about the recovery cities, like that's super huge. And
Yeah.
you know, so Dr. Burns actually also has created a umbrella program for the UCalgary Recovery Community called Recovery on Campus. And so with that organization, my colleague, she is working to get the 26 publicly funded post-secondary institutes in Alberta to do what we're doing here at the
Oh,
UCalgary.
wow.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
That's huge. I mean, that's got
Mhm.
that nice exponential effect just going throughout the whole province.
Yeah, for sure. So we're really
That's
hoping, that leads to places. We've even had Western University in Ontario reach out to us as well, and we've invited them to our advisory committee meetings with the schools in Alberta, because we want to try to help. We want to spread this, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll probably get our universities here in touch with you guys as well, if that's okay.
Ah, of course. Yeah, we would love to do that for sure.
So that's where you are today. What's on the horizon? Like, where do you see this all happening in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, I really, I think I only kind of touched on what we do with the space. Like we also are running peer support groups. So yeah, so we're doing those, because we're all pathways to recovery.
Mhm.
We offer 12 support group or 12 step based groups. We also offer all people, all pathways groups.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and we're also looking like we'd really like to be able to offer culturally appropriate groups. Not sure if you're familiar with Wellbriety, but that's kind of an Indigenous based recovery model. We also want to be there to support people who are dealing with process or behavioral addictions as well. Have a eating disorder specific group, internet, gambling. Like there's so many different um, issues that people are dealing with that we'd like to support around the addiction realm.
Right.
Um, Yeah, and we also offer substance-free housing on campus as well. So we are partnered. Yeah, we are partnered with resident services at the university, and we piloted our first suite, which has 4 beds, in September of 2023. And I just finished interviewing all the students for September 2024, and residence was able to give us 12 beds for that semester. So
Oh, that is
yeah.
amazing. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
make all the difference in the world to be able to be living with people who are not, who are, substance free. My God,
Yeah.
that's phenomenal. I can't commend you enough for doing that because, first of all, someone who's looking at having all these fears of going to university and having to
Mhm.
be with other people who are using, even if you have a community of 12 people that are in sobriety,
Mm.
that's just a whole different world right away. It's like I found my people, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, that community is so important, especially when, you might feel like an outlier or might feel different than others, right? Especially because recovery isn't talked about, right? Or
Yeah,
addiction, right? So
yeah,
being able to have that group of people that are going to be supportive of your lifestyle, I think it's really huge for sure.
I do too.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess in terms of like growth, we are a very small team right now. So I am, we're a team of 3 basically. There's my director, me, my colleague Chelsea runs recovery on campus. We just got funding to hire an outreach coordinator, so I'm really excited to have someone else on our team. But I
Nice.
just feel with with more staff, we can just do so much more to support, the campus members here at UCalgary. Um, in the future, I think I would really love to see us have like a whole. I think that
Yeah.
would be, really amazing. Um, we are also kind of in talks with some treatment centers in Calgary to look at what recovery housing might mean for us, off-campus recovery housing for students.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that, again, that's probably closer to the 5-year mark, but
Yeah.
something else we would love to be able to offer. Um, and then another piece is engaging our alumni is, I think, a piece that we haven't really been able to do yet, but having, alumni specific support groups where we can offer that continued community, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the problem. Yeah, that's a problem with a lot of social services is, you're engaged with something, or like you're engaged with the university for 4 years, you're part of the UCalgary Recovery Community, and then you're done and you go off into the workforce, and where's your support now,
Yeah.
right? Or you have to build up that community again,
Mhm.
right? So being able to continue that community of support, I think would be really amazing to be able to have.
Yeah.
Um,
That's right.
mhm.
Yeah. So true. So what would that look like?
I'm not too sure yet. Again, we're leaning on our friends in like in the treatment center kind of area, because they always have alumni of their program, right? And so how do they keep them engaged? How do they keep them um, supported and coming back? So that's definitely something that we're exploring and still sort of trying to navigate how we can do that. So
Mhm. Incredible.
mhm.
It sounds like such valuable work. So, have you had any sort of major hiccups or challenges that you're like, "Oh, no, we're we're not going in the right direction?"
um I think like the biggest difficulty for us, not necessarily that we're not going in the right direction, but the biggest difficulty has really been getting that addressing the misunderstanding of recovery.
Mhm.
especially like in our context, is we support all pathways. So for us, recovery is very individualized, and it really is around, we use the definition out of the States. SAMHSA is it's the substance abuse. I can't remember exactly what their program is, but their definition is that recovery is focused on the four areas of wellness: home, community, financial, and mental. I think those are the four areas. And so if you are working towards wellness in those four areas and you identify as being in recovery, then you are in recovery. That's
Mhm.
kind of how we look at it, right? And so I find that the universities, and maybe it's in a Canada context, like there's lots of support around harm reduction. But when you talk about sobriety, I think people get scared.
Mhm.
um, that I'm not exactly sure what it is, why our society is like that, but um, eh, because our university is very focused in the harm reduction area, I think we've been trying to align ourselves within the university and their strategies and strategic plan of supporting harm reduction and supporting sobriety and everything that's in between.
Mhm.
Um, so the challenge has still been getting that university buy-in, right? Like we would like right now we're kind of scrambling for funding everywhere we can, right? Applying for, grants through the city, through the province, through the students union. And we would love to be able to have operational dollars from the university where they say, okay, yes, you know what, this program 100% needed, here's the money, and we're going to continue this program.
Mhm.
So that's definitely been, I think, the biggest hurdle for us, that we're slowly getting there, right?
Yeah. Well, it's such an important point that you touch on because harm reduction uh, is a very compassionate, understanding sort of model, and
Mm,
it works to a certain extent halfway, I would say. But then there are other people who want complete sobriety and are not continuing to use, and
yeah.
uh, they have kind of been left out of the equation. And
Yes.
it's very much because there is a stigma around sobriety as well as addiction. And
Mm,
so, what we haven't come to as a society yet is how do we create an inclusive sobriety um,
mhm.
system? Because that's just as important as, being able to help people who are requiring a harm reduction model, a sobriety
Yeah.
model, a harm reduction model. They're both important and they're both valid. Um,
Mhm.
in my world, like if someone's committed to recovery, then that model should all roads lead to recovery, no matter what it is.
Mm,
But we're kind of seeing devastating effects of harm reduction without roads to recovery.
mhm.
That doesn't seem to be helping us in society. So now it's about how do we architect, like, for example, in the university, your university, what if there's four people who are interested in complete sobriety in that room, but one person is not, and then there's a different dynamic, and then,
Mhm.
so really it depends. Then it becomes what's that person's goal and outcome they're actually wanting to achieve. If it's sobriety, that's one place of living, sober living home,
Mhm.
sober living campus. But if it's a harm reduction model and everybody's at different places and that's where they
Mm,
want to be, that should also be available as well. And so there are many considerations, as you say, um, but with all roads leading to recovery, with everybody's attention on recovery, with everybody talking about it, because addiction thrives in the dark. And so
mhm.
this work that you're doing is so, so, so important because not only are you taking it out of the dark and into the light, you're also creating a place where people feel at home, people feel welcome, people feel included. people feel have the freedom to be educated. And those are all the basic fundamentals that people need to thrive. So congratulations. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Tina. Yeah, it's really exciting work for sure. And we do really hope that we can, you know, drive change in our society.
Mhm. Um, Tabitha, it's incredible. We're almost up time wise here now. It's surprising it just goes like that. But before we conclude, is there any advice that you'd like to share for our listeners, especially those who may be on their own recovery journey or considering university? Or what do you have to say to them that, I guess, share your wisdom?
Well, I don't know how much wisdom I can share, but I do think that, you know, it is a journey. I think it's important to note that recovery is a journey, and you know, we all have our own pathway to it, right? One way isn't wrong. You know, it's what works best for you.
Yeah.
Um, and reach out for support. That's a huge piece. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today without the supports that I have in place. Um, so, you know, anywhere you can reach out, I think is really important. So
Yeah, and it's surprising how many supports are actually out there when you start digging. We at Guardians of Recovery started to put together a support network of services within our province in Newfoundland, and all of a sudden it was like over 100 resources, and I was like, I had no idea, but there is a lot of resources and there is a lot of infrastructure, and your home is out there somewhere. You just have to do a bit of digging and look for it. But you know, there is a space for you to call your own. Your people are out there waiting for you.
for sure.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish up?
I think that's everything. I just want to say thank you so much for having me, for allowing me to share about my journey and about the amazing program that I work in. And I also want to thank you for the, you know, amazing work that you guys are doing out there too. I think it sounds so fabulous and so impactful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, our absolute pleasure. And to all the people working on this at University of Calgary, hats off to you all. And thank you so much for bringing it out to the other colleges and universities and really creating the exponential factor in all of this. So that wraps up today's episode, folks. We hope it's been informative for you and certainly educates us on what's possible for schools and universities. We want to see this in our high schools. We want to see it in our towns, universities, colleges, cities, so that we have an inclusive recovery space wherever you go. That's the goal. If you have any great stories or topics, please let us know. Go to our website, guardiansofrecovery.foundation. Drop us a line. Tell us what your story is or topics that you'd like to hear about. Join us next time as we continue to explore the stories of resilience and recovery and hope in this world that we call addiction, mental health, and recovery. Until then, take care. Remember that recovery is always possible. There is a person out there waiting to give you a hand, and life gets amazing when you recover. So until next time, I'm Tina Olivero, founder of Guardians of Recovery, and we look forward to serving you next time, being able to have conversations that truly make a difference, and you know, talking mental health and addictions. Over and out, folks.